There you go.
Okay, here it is.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Abstinence. While abstinence is not required to attend, please join meetings sober. If under the influence, do not participate verbally or in chat, except to contact a facilitator for support. Provide your contact info for treatment resources if needed. Politics. Sober Livers is nonpartisan. Our focus is on our shared experiences with AUD, liver diseases, transplants, and related health issues. Secularity. Sober Livers is primarily secular, but welcomes discussions on spirituality or religion as part of recovery, following our feedback guidelines. We are here to learn from each other, offering compassion, empathy, and kindness. Take what resonates with you and leave the rest.
Thank you. And are you seeing that in slideshow mode?
No, we're seeing your whole screen.
Okay. Okay. All right. Can y'all see the Hope Heroes?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Sorry, y'all. I think I screwed up when I went in. I had to press the recording and it started to record. I just wanted to reach out and say thank you to our Hope Heroes for Donate Life Month for the folks in Georgia. Nancy was there. I want to thank Beth, Nancy, Chris, and Caroline for sharing their time and energy and compassion representing sober livers at Piedmont Hospital. You guys also were at Emory too, right, Nancy? Oh no, not Emory. Okay. And they also, but they also represented at the American Liver Foundation Liver Life Walk, and Nancy was there for that. And so we really appreciate all that you've done, and you really empowered the body of hope. And we have had several people from the time that you guys went on their source, they say Piedmont, and so I know that they met you guys there. So thank you so much. And we're going to go ahead and introduce our guest tonight. And I want to welcome Dr. Thomas Capozza, but call him Tom. He joined Intercept and is now part of the Alpha Sigma group since 2023. Prior to joining Intercept, he was practicing hepatologist and gastroenterologist for 19 years, first with the U.S. Navy in San Diego. Thank you for your service there. And then in multi-specialty private practice located in southeastern Massachusetts. And Tom's involved in clinical development programs for MASH, PBC, and then also alcohol-associated hepatitis. And that is the main reason that we have him here today, is to answer our questions about clinical trials. And he's going to share a little bit about what he does. And then we can open it up to questions that all of y'all may have about clinical trials. And I know I have a lot of them, so I hope that y'all thought of some too before joining today. I think this is going to be a great session. So thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate being invited. This is great to have this chance to talk with you guys. And so, as Jen mentioned, I work for Intercept Pharmaceuticals. I'm part of the research and development group. And if any of you are familiar with Intercept or not, the company's real focus, the mission has been on looking for discovering and developing treatments for rare disease of the liver, as well as serious disease of the liver. And I've been with them now for the past 5 years and working on developing a certain compound in this very area that we're talking about this evening, which is alcohol-associated hepatitis. And so I think it's a really important area. So I'm super happy to talk about it. And I think one of the questions I was asked to sort of address is, what is a clinical trial? And I think, usually when I talk to people and I mention research, they think immediately of a laboratory somewhere with scientists looking in a microscope with a white coat on, very kind of sterile environment. But there are clinical trials, which are research studies where physicians, doctors, and participants look at new treatments and how they might work and whether they're safe. And this is all done to bring new treatments to people living with serious conditions. And particularly in liver disease, these are really important. I think you're probably as aware of this as I am, that there's very few treatment options for these liver diseases, whether they be rare diseases or severe diseases. And so I think it's super important that we keep working on developing new treatment options for people with living with these conditions. And clinical trials are available around the country. Most people are eligible to be in a trial if they're interested. Obviously, it's always about participation. It's voluntary, of course. But usually, when a trial is developed, there's certain criteria that they're looking for. You're trying to understand how a particular medication might work in a particular condition, and so you might have a certain age group you're looking at, or you might be looking at a certain lab value, for instance, or a specific stage of, let's say, liver disease, so maybe early stage or late stage. And so these are the types of things that might play into whether someone's eligible for a trial or not. And but ultimately, it's about learning that the trials are available to you and where do you go to find that. And one of the first places I say is ask your doctors locally, and I think they'll hopefully have an understanding of whether or not there's a trial that might be looking at new treatments for your specific condition that are reasonably close to you. And then, of course, are they safe? What are the benefits? What are the risks? Will this participation in this study, specifically, I think an important piece is, will it impact your treatment at all? So is it going to take place of your treatment, or will it interfere with it? So I think that's an important piece. And I think, writing these types of questions down, because obviously you come in and then you forget. And so I think that's an important part of this as well. And I think that we're going to talk a little bit later about the clinicaltrials.gov website, which is fantastic. So it's a great source for looking up trials that might be available to you. Now, the reason that Jen asked me to join was because our company is in the middle of doing a phase 2, we call it, study in severe alcohol-associated hepatitis. And so I guess I'll step back and say, maybe people don't know, there's several different phases of studies. So there's the early stages of the studies, which we call phase 1, where all we're doing is seeing whether or not the medications are safe. Then there's stage 2 or phase 2, and that's where we are now in our trial. And that's really looking at the treatment, the medication in people with a specific condition. And then two things: is it safe, and does it look like it might actually work? And once you kind of figure that out, you go into the final phase, which is the phase 3. Those are usually very large trials. Sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of individuals participate in these studies, and they can last for months, if not years in some cases. So they're very large and very long. And those are the studies that, once they're completed, if it shows that there is a benefit to the condition and that it's safe, of course, always that part, then you can actually submit that result to the FDA to try to get approval for the drug in that particular condition. And so I think those are the key things. So we're in phase 2 right now, the earlier phase, where we're evaluating patients with severe alcohol-associated hepatitis. And in our case, these are patients who are admitted to the hospital. So it's a little bit specific in that you have to be pretty darn sick because you're in the hospital to be eligible to be studied in our trial. And this is a very severe and life-threatening disease, and so it really has very few treatment options. And so we feel like this is a really important area where our medication will right now it looks like it's impacting outcomes. So it's reducing the chance of death, it's improving liver swelling, it's improving a number of those types of markers. And so we're pretty excited about the possibility that this might be a new treatment for patients with this severe condition. And I think if people are interested in participating in trials, maybe not mine, because it would have to be in the hospital. So I hope none of you end up in that condition. But the clinicaltrials.gov website, I think it's a great place to go to look. And I think we're going to talk about that here in just a bit. But with that, Jen, I think maybe I'll just stop there, and then happy to answer questions. I know Mark had some questions about the drug. I'm really excited to talk to you about how it works, etc. This is the best part. That's the fun part for me. So I'll stop there, and I'll turn it back to you, Jen.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thanks. Well, that gives us a little bit of background and some information and at least a little foundation to build upon when we're talking about this. I know like all these thoughts in my head came up. My first question, and then I'll open it up to the group, because when you say severe alcohol-associated hepatitis, what makes it severe versus say regular alcohol-associated hepatitis?
That's a great question, and because it's different, it's unique, and so we know that patients, individuals who consume alcohol will develop uh, degrees of fat in their liver, right? The steatotic liver. So you'll get that in the background. This is a bit of an acute injury. So it's a very severe acute injury to the liver where you get very severe swelling. Patients develop jaundice, so that the skin turns yellow because the liver is so injured, and then the liver, in many cases, it stops functioning and it goes into liver failure. And then in some cases, the patients recover and they can actually do just beautifully and have in some cases, full recovery. So it's a bit of a different type of a condition because it's such an acute and severe condition, as opposed to the sort of the low level chronic kind of progressive disease that you might see in other cases. And so I think it's important that, and that's why I mentioned that patients are hospitalized. That's how severe this condition is. And so it really has to do with the level of the labs, right? So the higher the labs, that means the patient is more severe, and that's how it's defined.
Which labs are you talking about? Like your MELD score? Are you talking about your AST, ALT, or are you talking about all of the above? Your bilirubin?
So yes, all the above. But the key one is bilirubin. So the bilirubin has to be very high, and that's part of why, when I mentioned patients turn jaundiced, because the bilirubins are very high. But the AST and ALT will be very high. Sometimes it impacts the kidney function, so sometimes their kidney function levels will be very high. And then, of course, their blood clotting factors, and that's blood clotting factors made by the liver. So if the liver is so injured that it can't make the blood clotting factors, the liver blood clotting numbers will go up, and that's part of the scoring system as well. So, but MELD is one of the very scoring systems that are used to define how severe it is: mild, moderate, and severe.
Right, right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've always been a little bit interested because when I asked my doctor if I had severe alcohol-associated hepatitis or just alcohol-associated hepatitis, and he's like, "Let me look back." He's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, because he looked at my bilirubin and he looked at my MELD, which was my MELD was about a 32, and I think my Billy was close to the same, and
Yeah.
so. Yeah, so that's very interesting. Okay, well, with that said, Mark, I know you've got your question. Go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. I know you're so excited. You're on mute.
How about now?
Yep.
You're good.
All right, great. I have a lot of questions, but I'll just ask the two of them. One, it sounds like that medication right now that you were just discussing is, kind of very much like triaging because your patients are in bad shape. So and so I can see the need for that. Are you guys working on anything that you would take as more of a prophylactic kind of thing that you didn't have to get that into that circumstance?
Yep. No, that's a great question. And yes, exactly. So that was our approach, is that the medication works, at least in the early stages. We felt
But
like it
now
works.
you're cycling back.
Yeah, say let's start with the sickest people first because they're the highest need, but we have plans. This drug will work if you take it long term, and that could be for prevention. So the medication, it's called an FXR agonist, and there are already medications on the market that are FXR agonists, so that same mechanism that are used to treat underlying conditions of chronic liver disease. So PBC, primary biliary cholangitis, is the condition. But our drug, it improves liver inflammation, it reduces liver fat, it reduces liver scar tissue or fibrosis. So it hits all three of the areas, right? Swelling, inflammation, fat, and fibrosis.
Is that in a pre-damage state or repairing?
So It could be either. Obviously, we're going to study it in patients who already people who already have some damage to see if we can reverse it. But
Right.
you're absolutely right. There's the potential that you could envision something like this being preventative, where if you have the condition, it gets treated, it gets reversed, you stay on the medication to prevent you from ever kind of progressing back, the other way.
Great. And one other question, and then I'll get off.
Yeah, sure.
So if somebody, because one of the big benefits that I've gotten out of these calls in general, is just part of as being a participant is a lot of like kind of reference material and stuff gets identified, and it's like, geez, I wish I'd known about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if somebody like in our group that's on this like tonight is interested in getting involved in a trial, do you have some kind of technical pro forma that you send to their care team, like what you used to do in your previous life?
Yeah.
You have that kind of, here it is in 15 pages. You can evaluate this against where your patient is, so you can give the thumbs up or thumbs down to participate. Do you have that?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, we do, and it's sort of a little bit of an indirect way. So when we do these research trials, you have sites, you have in research sites that enroll that become participants. So
Right.
I just the Piedmont Hospital. So I know Lance Stein, who's the head of the transplant program at Piedmont. That could be a site, right? So Piedmont Hospital would be the research site, and what we do is we have sort of I'll call it a wheel and spoke kind of a thinking, where it's like Piedmont is at the center of the wheel, and then all the spokes are the outlying clinics. And what you do with our new trials anyway, you can actually connect through apps, right? And so all these outlying clinics and doctors they know about the potential for this
They've
trial.
signed up.
Yeah, yeah. And so then they all communicate. So in a way, yes, you could get the 2-pager, let's call it, of what the drug is studying and whether you're already eligible, and then where do you go to be seen.
Yeah, I know the level of technical communication and sophistication has gotten to the point now that there's really no excuse for somebody not being able to find that information. But going through, you being a doctor, this as well as us being patients, that the more the more dangerous you are in terms of getting your way through the minefield of medical care. And just knowing, having this kind of information where people say, I want to participate, I think, do you think it will help me? And by the way, I'm paving the road for you. Here's where you get all the data on how it could apply to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that Tiffany will probably be able to answer a lot of those, because I think it sounds like what she's going to describe is exactly what you're looking for, which is a place to go to look it up. And then, of course, these like clinicaltrials.gov will have a list of every single site that's participating in that trial, and you can find them, and then you can link to them, and then of course there's all kinds of electronic sharing of information now, websites, and like I said, we have an app that allows us to connect. So all kinds of new ways of connecting participants with the potential sites.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've got a follow-on question real quick, but go ahead, Eileen. You go ahead before me. And you're on mute. Great to see you.
Thank you. So thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it. Because knowledge is the power that we do have from a site like this, and peer support and the specialists. So thank you again. I'm getting my first intake is obviously your relationship with your physician. On the East Coast, and I'm associated with Einstein and Jefferson Health. And my first course of action, I would be because this is like a 3-year with data that they have on me with the bilirubin and the numbers, is a sit down with them to see if this would even qualify for me, is what and that's what you're saying as well. Definite connection there. Because like, how bad do the numbers have to be, to like the extreme of the meld is 30 some, and their Billy those kind of numbers to
Yeah.
qualify for something like this.
Right. So our particular trial, because again, we're looking for the most severe, your MELD score has to be over 21 to be eligible. So we're really looking
Okay.
for patients that have very high MELD scores. And so, that's pretty high. So,
Yeah, I think which I'm doing something else with this group too, is because when I was admitted it was 30, 31, and
yep.
I'm down to 10
Nice.
now.
Very nice.
Um, thank you for the clap up there. But it's through knowledge again with the different drugs and following the doctor's wisdom and our own and knowledge. And so
Yep.
um
Right. So in
I'm
your,
like in the holding pen, but
yeah, yeah.
I don't know where everybody, I know some people really, I don't know if this even affects transplanted patients at all at this point, that what you're doing either. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we have
Go ahead.
not, that's a good question. We haven't studied it in patients who've had liver transplants. That would be something that could come later once you sort of establish that it's safe, right? You want it to be safe first. Then you could potentially think about expanding it into different groups for longer term therapy. But yeah, for now, it's sort of, and I was just saying to Mark, we're focusing on the people who are the sickest and the most acute and are, really, really in dire straits. That's our first goal. And then once we sort of achieve that goal, then we start thinking about how could this be used long term for others to help them, to help their livers recover, right? If we can reverse your fibrosis with a drug like this, that would be fantastic, right? That would be a really important piece. And that's my goal.
Absolutely.
That's
Sci-
silver bullet.
Uh, just my following question real quick is, I've heard of a lot of some of the drugs being developed for SAH, that's severe alcohol-associated hepatitis, guys, that it's being used as kind of like a bridge to transplant. And is that what you guys are thinking about with this drug? Is it a bridge to transplant, or are you looking at a bridge to recompensate, or what's the end goal that you're looking
Yeah.
for?
Yeah. So our goal is the latter. It's a bridge to recovery and it's a bridge to regeneration. I mean, I don't think liver transplant is a great, option if you can avoid it, right? I mean, I know it's certainly life-saving and it's fantastic, but if I can develop a medication that can keep people from needing to get a liver transplant, that's really the goal. So for us, it's about bridging to recovery, and then, as I mentioned, reversing fibrosis and regeneration and these types of things. So ultimately, that would be I think the ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. And I mean, as Nancy knows, and people who have had transplants, I mean, that's financially, it's a huge burden. It's over $1 million versus being on medication that could possibly get you well. I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So anybody else who else has a question?
I do. I have a
Go ahead.
question.
All right.
Well, I know that a lot of people, when they go to not to a hepatologist, but their regular doctors or the emergency room, and they're diagnosed with cirrhosis, even though they don't have cirrhosis, and they're given this short time to live when they actually have alcohol-induced hepatitis. But there's so much inflammation, it's hard to tell what's going on there. And then when they stop drinking, they start to improve some. So if someone on this medicine and they start to improve some and they stop drinking and they haven't reached cirrhosis yet, they just have like F3 fibrosis. And how do you know that if they're having improvements that it's from the medicine or their length of time without alcohol?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And so if you don't, honestly, because it's impossible to know in a single individual what's driving it. But when we do these clinical trials, part of what the FDA requires is that you have to compare it to something that doesn't have your drug in it, right? So when you go into one of these trials, we call it randomized, right? Because they literally have a randomization machine where it's a 50-50, you get a flip of a coin and you go into one arm, which is called the standard of care arm, which includes everything but your drug. So it's all that. And then the other arm, you get randomized into the other arm, you get the standard of care plus your drug. And so when you do the study at the end of, let's say you enroll 200 people, 100 in each arm, you compare the two arms and the differences between those scientifically, you expect to be due to your drug. And so that's how you kind of prove it. But I think your point is a good one, because in any individuals, it's really hard to know. But what I would say is that abstinence is always the first and the most effective therapy, bar none, beyond all of these other treatments. And, treatments like ours are really to try to, prevent people from dying, essentially, to allow them the opportunity to recover and then get better. And so, obviously, if after 3 to 6 months you're doing so well that you can come off the drug, that would be a fantastic, opportunity.
Are you looking at if somebody has acute hepatitis and is taking your drug and they seem to show improvement from that, are you looking at whether or not that, and they were quote unquote a candidate for a transplant, kind of within the whole sphere of things, and they improve, the hepatitis improves, are you looking at whether or not they have to keep going down the transplant road, or maybe there could be some other, because I was the other option. I didn't have to go down the transplant road.
Right.
So I'm just curious if you're looking at that.
Yes, absolutely. And so one of the things we'll do, and one of the things we're planning on doing, because we're not into that phase 3 yet, we're into the phase 2. But once we finish the phase 2, and we should be finished hopefully soon, the next phase will be doing exactly that. So you'll be following these patients. So they're going to be treated for, let's say, 3 months to get them through this acute injury. And then you're going to follow them over time to see, what happens with them. So there will be that possibility to know, do they get better and eventually need a transplant? Do they get better and, obviously don't need a transplant, et cetera. So it's a fairly long-term commitment to sort of follow over time to see, whether or not the drug would be beneficial to again take for longer, or to just use it in the short term to get people through their acute event.
What is your company's name again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's Intercept Pharmaceuticals, but as Jen mentioned, our company was acquired by another company like 2 years ago called Alpha Sigma, one word. And Alpha Sigma Pharmaceuticals is it's actually an Italian company. They're based in Milan, Italy, and so we're a subsidiary now. We're a whole.
Yeah, I know who those guys are. All right.
You do?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they developed Xifaxan. That was their big
So you actually answered a bunch of questions that just by saying that, because I'm always curious, because I talk to people in finance all the time, and whether or not some of these well, there was the tariffs, but then there's been a lot of withholding on research grants and things like that, if that impacted your company in terms of, because working on alcohol related disease of any kind is probably not the most popular in the people that are handing out the money. And I'm trying not to get political, but
no, I think that's a fair assessment. That and I'll tell you that it's even hard within our own community, right? I mean, for us to sort of champion studying alcohol, because everyone wants to study hepatitis, or they want to study MASL D, right? It's these types of things. So we have to fight even within our own community to keep people focused. And I think, Jen, you mentioned this at Jessica Mellinger's presentation. I was there for that. I thought it was great. But what is it? It's like 5%, less than 5% of all research is going towards this particular topic now. So it's an important one to fight for. And but I guess going back to your original point, yeah, it's a privately held company, so it's not. there aren't any,
You're
federal
not
funds.
you're not grant reliant.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Unfortunately, but fortunately, I guess that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true, I mean, I'm excited to see that there's research in this area. I think there needs to be a lot more education about how, people are developing alcohol-associated liver disease. Everybody has their own journey. Everybody has their own genetics. Everybody, there's a lot that goes into why somebody becomes sick. And, and mental health. And so I did want to ask a question on that as so if somebody is in your trial and they get out of the hospital, do you guys have any type of like social support that you guys offer, or psychosocial support, or what is there for the patient that goes through a trial with you?
Yes. So it's probably one of the most important pieces to the whole study, really, is to provide that. And so we do provide alcohol use disorder therapy, counseling, depending on what's available regionally. And so that's a big part of it. The other thing that we provide, again, fancy apps, things like this. We have there's these applications where you can connect with your physician or your researcher, through the app, telehealth, that kind of stuff. We also have with Uber now offers something called Uber Health, which is an app you can use for clinical trials where the patients who are participants who are in the trial can get transportation to and from completely seamlessly. So there isn't any you have to pay and get reimbursed. It's just simply you schedule it like it's Uber. You schedule it like Uber, and then they come pick you up and they drop you off, and etc. And it even allows for transportation of blood and tissue and things like that. So let's say you need to give a urine sample, but you don't want to have to drive to the clinic. You can actually give the urine sample and they'll come pick it up and deliver it for you. So there's all kinds of new ways to try to make it easier.
So that would help with getting patients in the rural areas, for
Yes,
example. Right?
exactly.
Because those are the patients I find that when we look at trying to have diversity in clinical trials, that's one of the issues that we run into is accessibility. People with kids, for example, that can't make it. I love that. That is fabulous. That's really great news. So I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's only scratching the surface of what we can do. I mean, and these are all pretty new things, and so we're trying to involve all.
So when somebody's in your trial, the ones right now, they're significantly ill and in the hospital. So the medication that they would be taking when they get home, so they're out of that, that really bad stage, they're home. How long do they continue to take the medication for right now? Do you have a prescribed length? Are they on it for a year afterwards, or 6 months, or 4 months? And then I'll ask you the $1 million question: who pays for that?
Yeah. So the first part is this trial. It's a pill. It's an oral pill once a day. And right now, because we're in the earliest stages, it's for 28 days. We're treating for 4 weeks, right? Because we're really assessing for safety and early signs of effectiveness. Ultimately, it'll be a 3-month therapy if we're successful. Okay. And then the next stage would be then long-term, a year, depending on how much scar tissue you have in your liver, for instance. So you might need it for longer to help reverse it. So most patients, they're in the hospital, they're going to be in the hospital on average for maybe like a week. And then once they go home, they'll continue the medication and then, use these Cling1 app and the Uber Health to kind of to get to their visits.
So I'm sorry, I hate to do this, but just one more thing.
Sure.
So if you're in the trial and you're taking this medication out of the hospital, and your goal is to really determine long-term if it's making a difference in terms of previous damage that was done in a restorative fashion. So you guys paying for all the scans?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
and like how frequently?
Yeah. So what I would say is that generally speaking, in clinical trials, everything should be covered. If it isn't, you have to question the trial. So the clinical trial should pay for all the visits, all the labs, all the scans, all the whatever you need.
That's the one thing with insurance, and everybody that's on this call has their own horror stories. But there are certain things that the insurance companies are having a real hard time paying now.
Yeah.
And so it's harder to get your doctor to,
Mhm.
really fight to get that approved. So I was just curious about, the scans part of it, because really
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
all.
only way you can tell. I mean, you can do blood work out the wazoo, but unless you have a really good look at what you're looking at.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And yeah, so everything should in clinical trials, it should be covered. It's all paid for. You shouldn't have to pay a dime for anything.
Wow.
That's typically how it works. At least that's the way it should work. Like I said, if it's not working that way, you have to question the trial. But so in kind of coming back, yes, we're scanning people at regular intervals for as long as they're in the trial. And again, we're still in that early, we call it proof of concept, right? So it's
Sure.
like we have an idea, we're trying to prove it. And then once we get into that phase 3, that's when we'll be following people for longer.
Right.
And so again, as long as you're in the trial, your visits, your blood, your scans, all that stuff is covered. There isn't any cost.
What year are you in development?
So this trial's been ongoing since it's been 2 years roughly. And we started the trial in 2023. We should finish it up we'll finish it up in 2026. So then we'll move on to the next phase shortly thereafter. So we'll be in
So
phase.
did you guys apply with FDA like in 2021?
Yeah, we apply. Yeah, right. You apply for what's called a new drug application, right?
Yeah,
Early, and so yeah, we submitted that. Yeah, you're right. Probably about 2020, 2021, something in those range.
Okay.
Yeah, because you start by doing what's called a phase 1 before you do anything, right? Which is just to
Yeah.
get some volunteers to take the thing and see what happens and make sure it's safe. And you do that in a very small, controlled environment, and then you move into the phase where we're in now.
Yeah, I did that with LSD back in the 60s, and so it was a very well controlled.
Right. Those phase 1 units. Yeah. Wow.
Oh my. Oh, okay, Mark, enough. No, I'm just kidding. Lindsay, you have a question, I see.
I just have because I don't mean for it to be a negative, but in the long-term stance, thinking as someone that used to use, what happens if they start drinking again?
Yeah,
If
I
they think
mean,
their liver's getting better and
yeah,
you're looking at them long-term, what's going to happen if the person?
yeah. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question because, it's something that we think about. Could our drug, if somebody were to take the drug and start drinking again, could it be preventative? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't. I mean, it's never been studied, so I
Yeah.
really couldn't tell you. I can tell you that we've looked at prevention in mouse models, and it looks like it prevents, but I mean, that's a mouse. So,
Yeah.
it's hard to know for sure what would happen
I'm just curious, but in my
Yeah,
usage,
yeah.
I would have thought, okay, let's take this so my liver gets better, and then, so I'm
Yeah.
just curious about that part.
Yeah, and I think that's a super important point, and that's why I think kind of coming back to what Jen was mentioning is the alcohol use disorder kind of counseling and support is going to be really, I think,
Okay,
important
thank
to
you.
try to, supplement that.
Tom, are you going to be able to stay with us a little bit after? Because I want to make sure everybody gets their questions
Yeah,
answered.
of course.
So,
Yeah, I can hang around. That's fine.
okay, I just wanted to check because I wanted to go ahead and move over to Tiffany and have Tiffany. It looks like we're having a couple more people adding on too, so that they may have some questions as well for you. For those of you, well, I guess all of you probably don't know Tiffany. Tiffany is she's our program manager at Fatty Liver Foundation, and she runs the show. She actually manages a program called the Wellness League, and she is just a wonderful, she does know a lot. When I came to Fatty Liver, I've learned a lot from her. So I'm going to let her share some really great information. We are going to be launching a website here sometime in May, and that website is going to have this feature on it that is going to make finding clinical trials a little bit easier. And so, Tiffany, go ahead and take it away. And let me make sure you can share yours. Oh, did I make you? Hold on, I've got to make you but go ahead. You can go ahead and start talking.
Yeah, thank you, Jen, and thank you for that really warm welcome. I need to have a recording of that introduction every morning when I wake up to start my day. And hello, everyone. Good evening. It's a really pleasure to be here tonight. As Jen mentioned, I do manage the Wellness League, which is our online platform, for people living with steatotic liver disease. So we're really open to anyone with any condition under that term, but more relevant for this community. Jen and I have been working for the past few months on expanding a feature of this website called the search tool, to help make clinical trials easier to access, and learn more about. And we actually do use clinicaltrials.gov, but I think we've sort of, I guess you could say, cut out a step or two, trying to eliminate the burden of, understanding which technical terms for your condition to search for, or which phase, knowing which intervention, which drug. We sort of wanted to cut a bit of that out, so that you can make it easier to find trials. So today I'm going to be doing a demo on how to use the search tool. Today I'll be showing you how to do this on the Wellness League site, but as Jen mentioned, in the future we do want to host the search tool on the Sober Livers page. So the steps themselves will stay the same, but it just might be a different URL. So did we have my slide up with the...
Yes. Yeah, hold on 1 second. Let me open that up.
I've already covered pretty much everything that's on the slide, but in case y'all are interested, I do have a QR code where you can download what I'm going to be going over today. It's just a how-to guide, so you can have this with you after we leave tonight's session. So I'll pause just for a second in case anyone wants to take a photo of the QR code.
Here's it bigger there.
And then, okay, so
Good.
I think we're good.
Okay. And we'll put the URL too in the chat. Well,
That's a good idea. All right, so can everyone see my screen? Excellent. So this is the search tool, the homepage of the search tool. So like I said earlier, this is gonna be the same framework, but just on the Sober Livers website. And so today I'm gonna be showing you, again, finding clinical trials, but I do wanna make a plug just for the tool in general. This is a really amazing resource for finding just a wealth of free and low cost resources in your community. You can see this little zip code box. That's all you need to do a search. And you can find things like food pantries, assistance with helping you get to medical appointments. They offer job placement programs, help paying for utilities. This is, I can't say enough how amazing this tool is. So I encourage you guys to check it out on your own. Just plug in your zip code and see what's available, because again, like I said, all of these programs are either free or low cost, and you can find something, in your neighborhood. So if you look down below, let me maybe zoom in a bit. You can see these icons that we've named for the different conditions that we've sort of broken down the searches for. So everything from mast cell to liver cancer. So just for this demonstration, I'll poke into clinical trials for ALD and AUD. So once you click on that icon, the next window that opens breaks down the clinical studies by the various phases that Tom mentioned earlier. And then we also include like observational studies. So there are patient registry studies and cohort studies that you can learn more about. Also behavioral intervention. So this would be like studies that maybe are testing a mobile application to see if that might influence your behavior. New devices, you can access those studies here. So let's just say you're interested in a phase 2 trial So to get to that, you would just click on this section here where it says go to the program's website. And once you do that, you're taken to a curated search on clinicaltrials.gov. So we've gone in and done the work of finding all the different keywords so that you guys don't have to. And you're returned with a list of recruiting trials in the United States. So if you're open to traveling, you can, go ahead and start from here. But if you want to narrow down your search, maybe to your city or your state, all you'd have to do is just update the location field here. Just for an example, and then click apply filters, and that will narrow down your search. So Jen, you mentioned Intercept's trial, and I was really hoping to be able to show today that, yes, we found the Intercept trial, but this is a learning experience for us. I will go ahead and update the keyword search to include alcohol-related hepatitis.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
have that in the list tonight, so I can't show us finding the Intercept trial, but if I just go ahead and update the keyword search, it shows. I've tested that on my own, but we can easily make that change afterwards. But so yeah, so this is basically.
That's one of the reasons I'm really glad that we're doing this right now, because this is how you find the bugs.
Yeah. I used to
Because
work
I
in
did find it too. It's called Fresh, right, Tom?
Great. Fresh.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have a question real quick this is a question for Tom, since we're right here, and she just talked about location information. And I know your trial is primarily going to be for people that are in the hospital, but say someone like us are looking for something, say for cirrhosis or something like that. How advantageous is it for us to try to find something in our area? Because is there money that they will pay for your travel or anything like that? Or is that normally something that isn't done and you should really kind of try to stick to your geographic region?
Well, again, most trials will pay for travel and they'll even pay for a hotel and things like that if necessary. And in some cases, and I think most trials and ours included, pay for childcare, these types of things, so that, if you have to take time off and you need someone to babysit, you can have that reimbursed. But yeah, I think obviously to me, being closer to the center certainly makes your life easier because of the travel burden, right? So I think if you can find something nearby, great. But if it isn't nearby, almost all trials, and again, clinical research trials that I'm involved with, we always reimburse for travel and all those incidental kind of costs because it is a burden.
Right. Okay, that was something that I've been curious about too, in looking at clinical trials. So yeah, so if y'all are looking for something specifically for your condition, like I have things like peripheral neuropathy and other types of or portal hypertension, and so there's certain things that we people that still have their livers are experiencing that we may not have severe alcohol-associated hepatitis, but are obviously suffering from other things as a result of having cirrhosis.
Right. And it also probably depends a little bit on how often you have to go in for visits. Like when it's an acute severe illness, you're coming in, frequently, which that could be a lot. But if you're only having to go into the clinic for the checkups maybe twice a year, then, you could certainly go much, much further. And again, that would all be reimbursed.
Okay. Tiffany, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just thought that would be a good thing for people to understand about travel.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's totally relevant to the conversation, so no worries at all. I was actually pretty close to wrapping up the demonstration. I mean, it's short because, well, we don't want there to be a ton of steps for you to have to take. But I would say, I guess the last step would be obviously, once you've read through a couple of the trial names and you've found one that you're interested in, just click on the name of the study. And you'll open up more study details where you can read more about, eligibility criteria, study site location, and contact information. So for example, here you can see who would be the contact person if you have any questions, and are ready to reach out.
Great.
So this is
Thank
all,
you.
this is all up and fully functional, right?
Yes, this is live. So I can drop a link to the search tool in the chat right now. So you guys,
I'm just curious. So, I mean, everybody has had different experiences with their care team, but I know with mine there were so many different disciplines represented medically that we had a nurse practitioner that kind of quarterbacked the whole thing between the hepatologist and everybody else, neurologists, all that kind of thing. Has this been provided to people like that at different hospitals and stuff to say, here's a resource? I mean, I just how widely has this kind of thing been communicated?
not yet, but I think that is a great idea and a great goal to have in the future. Right now, we're sort of starting with just organic, face-to-face, sort of what I'm doing here with you tonight, and just communicating directly with patients. But I do think that it would be worthwhile to make some partnerships with, different clinics and physicians.
I just know, like at the Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, where I had all my wonderful care given to me. I just know that the social work person who again tries to pull everything together is constantly bombarded with questions about resources just like this. Where can I find out? Like if my team doesn't have an answer for some symptom I continue to show, where can I just go for my own edification and find out what's out there? I just think that would be great for people to know that here's a resource to look this stuff up.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I definitely think there should be more efforts to look at the patient more holistically and sort of bring together all of the different needs of the patient in an ideally single place where one can go and search for whatever they need.
I have a question, Tiffany. I want to know if these cards are still good. I have lots of them, and I do give them away often at events that I'm working at.
Okay.
Will it take them to the clinical trial stuff also?
I can't, I'll have to pull up that card on Canva, but if you have a cell phone, you could test that QR code.
That's what I'm about to do. I'll see if it works, because that's good information. Also share it
If
in
not,
Facebook
we'll
group.
order some updated ones ASAP.
Wonderful. Does anybody else have any questions for Tiffany while we have her here? Oh, she's going to stay too. So if y'all have some other questions, lingering questions that come up, she can answer those for you there. Okay, well, she's going to share one more thing with you too while we have her. And so let me bring up this next slide here. And we've also launched our survey. And so Tiffany, you want to talk a little bit about the survey?
Yes, so this is our 4th year, I want to say, running the State of Steatotic Fatty Liver Care in America survey. So again, as you can imagine, this is a survey for patients with steatotic liver disease. So everyone here, I believe, is eligible to participate. It's entirely optional. None of the items are required. It's anonymous. And we use this data to really advocate for patients. We take the data and we present the findings at different conferences. If you're familiar with the liver meeting in November, yes, so we want to hear your voice. Please share it if you feel comfortable. Again, everything is entirely optional. So whatever you don't feel comfortable answering, you don't have to. But we really encourage you to join and take part of this really important initiative and, helping to amplify our voices because yeah, we're stronger as a community. And I think our collective voices will be heard.
Thanks, Tiffany. And just FYI, last year was the first year that we had people with alcohol-associated liver disease included in the survey. So let's really get our voices out there and increase the percentage that we had this past year, which I think was under 4%. Is that right, Tiffany? So but we just got started and we had just gotten started. So this year we're gonna increase that number because I know there's a lot of us out there that would like to really improve the health care here in America. And I'll put a link to that as well as soon as I finish with one more slide here. And as I've mentioned to y'all before, we have our buddy system. And so this is basically a place where you can put your phone number in there and say if you want to be a Hope Buddy, meaning somebody can call you, or that you would prefer to be somebody that you could just call other people, or somebody who would do both. This is a way that we can really start generating community and get everybody to get to know each other a little bit better, because we only meet together now twice a month and on Facebook, but that's just not enough. I really want to build this community to where you guys have a sense of belonging and a sense of friendship. And so I encourage you all to be a buddy and then start talking to each other. And we're going to be going into our reflections period next. And our open discussion meeting is going to be on May 13th. And I think I'm seeing that right. Y'all's photos, pictures are down here. Yeah, May 13th will be our next open discussion meeting. But we're gonna stick around here for a little bit because I know we have a couple people who joined us. And so if you have any questions for Tom or questions for Tiffany or questions for any of us, just go ahead and raise your hand.
I want to say that to Tiffany that the QR code on here does work and you can look for clinical trials on it.
Excellent.
Good with what I've got for now till I run out.
Let me know.
Okay. And Tom, you mentioned Dr. Stein. What does he have to do with this? I do know Dr. Stein.
Oh, no, I just that I know Lance, and
Okay.
when you said Piedmont,
He's
Sure.
not my doctor. I am a patient at Piedmont, but I was transplanted at Emory. But I've met him at transplant conferences and the liver meeting. He was there too. Yeah. And I've listened to him speak before.
Marcy, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Tiffany, and Jen, and that website. That's amazing. That is truly amazing. And for Tom, thank you for being here and your time. I have a question. What kind of sizes, like, is your clinical trial and like what are the sizes that they usually have them at? Was my first question.
Mhm. So the size of the trial, they get bigger as the phases go on. So in the early phase, those phase 1 and phase 2, which is where our study is, a phase 2, you're going to have 40 or 50 patients total, right? It's going to be a very small study because you're first kind of dipping your toe into the water to find out, to make sure the drug is safe. So, just a few patients. But as you get into the upper phases, you'll go from, 40 or 50 to 300 or 400 in most cases. And sometimes depending on the condition, so let's say cardiology studies, they'll have thousands of patients. But in liver disease, because it's a little bit different, they're typically in the hundreds. So right now, our study, we have 46 patients who have been enrolled, and we're hoping to get another 40. And then the next phase, we would probably be looking at closer to 300 patients.
Thank you. And the second question, the last part of that, or my last question is, what is kind of are these done throughout the US in all kinds of states? Okay. And then what's kind of the hospital or the doctor kind of acceptance level is not the right words I'm looking for, but you know what I mean? What is your overall general feeling of how their acceptance or their interest in these kind of things?
Yeah. So the first part, our study is all over the country. We have about 26 sites in the US, and then we have a bunch of sites in the UK and some sites in France as well. Um, and of course, as the next phase, we would end up with closer to 90 sites in the US. So it'll be all over the country. And I'd say the second part, the acceptance has gone up dramatically. I think what we're finding is that physicians are really excited about this possibility because I think everyone is starting to really recognize the severity of the disease and the lack of treatment options for patients with these underlying conditions. And so I think there's been we're having to turn people away, so to speak. I think, there's been a very good reception. I think the tide has turned in terms of the acceptance, I think, in my opinion, in the last 5 years.
Do you think that a lot of that had to do with COVID and the number of ER visits they were having with people coming in with alcohol-associated hepatitis and
I
them
think
needing
it's
to
a
try
big
to
part of
save
it.
lives and not being able to, and how tragic that was for people?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. When you look at the numbers, the number of people who have been admitted to the hospital with this condition since 2020 has skyrocketed, and it went up. Right now, the number of people who are receiving liver transplants for this condition has increased 200% since 2020. So that was a big part of it, I think. And so I think people are really kind of
Receiving?
correct. Yeah, 200% increase in the number of people receiving it. There's a 400% increase in the number of people listed for transplant and a 200% increase in the number of people receiving a transplant for this condition since the 2020 pandemic. It's really, really impacted the community greatly. So I think that may be a big part of it, Jen, is there's this real recognition now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Ariana, how you doing? Oh, you're on mute.
Do that every time. I have meetings all day. You think I would learn? Thank you so much. Thanks everyone. Hi. Thanks for being here with us, Tom. And oh gosh, I forgot your name, Tiffany. If I am a program manager or change manager, I should have gone into medical field maybe instead of tech. Anyway, I'm curious on the number side. The percentage with the number of people participating in trials compared to what is the percentage of people diagnosed with liver disease? Like how many people are participating? What's the percentage?
It's I can't give you a percentage, but it's a very small percentage. I think that's
Yeah.
the big part
My
of it.
concern is the findings are not necessarily like all encompassing, which is probably true for a lot of clinical trials, right? And so, because they have to, healthcare lumps us into these buckets, and not everyone fits into these nice little buckets. And because like this massive increase since COVID, like, I don't know, I'm not getting any healthcare, and they're just ignoring me, and it's a disaster. And so I'm just wondering, like, if you think there might be an increase in the amount of clinical trials showing up with an increase in people suffering from liver disease.
I mean, I hope so, and I think so. I think that the number of trials, at least in this area, have gone up considerably, even though it's still a very small number, it's gone up. And so I think that my hope is that you're exactly right, that there will be more and more of these potential offerings for people to enroll in these types of opportunities. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, what can we do as people suffering with liver disease help, like, yeah, share our voice? Like, there needs to be funding, right? Like and it's so stigmatized, and I hate that it is, because a lot of people, I think, have liver disease from a culmination of life experiences. It's not just alcohol use disorder, and it gets labeled that way, and it's sad. So, I'm willing to like be an advocate and speak out on this behalf of this group of people, and like, what can I do to say we need help? Where to, listen to us.
I think you're kind of you're starting to do that right now. I mean, the patient advocacy part of it is massive. I mean, we look at other areas of liver disease, and there's a very strong patient advocacy kind of movement, and MASLD is a great example. PBC is another example. Really, really robust patient advocacy. And I think this area right here is, you're one of the first groups to start to do this. And I think that's going to be really important, is that we have really strong patient advocacy for this particular group, because I think, as to your point earlier, it's one of those areas that I think people we've known about, but really haven't been facing. And so I think this is a good start, really good start.
I think that was the operative point, is that facing is the term, because I don't think there are any accurate statistics out there right now of how many people die from alcohol-related liver disease, period. Because
way underestimated.
Right. I mean, once you're dead, you're dead. Your family decides how that happened, basically, unless it's something that's very obvious. So
A lot of people never go to the doctor, so,
right.
and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the unmet need is there, and I think if we as a community, and that's one of the main reasons I started Sober Livers, is there wasn't really that anything out there that combined education with social support. I mean, I found Ariana and some other people here at LifeRing Liver Spot is the only other meeting I found anywhere that was for people with alcohol-associated liver disease. But that's something that we're trying to change. And I really want, like what happened with AIDS in the 80s and 90s, with that stigmatization of that disease. I just think if people could just have their voice, but there's so many complications between their jobs and their families. I mean, it's really, really hard. Where for me, this is my job, so it's not as hard as it is for other people to talk about. So yeah, I really would like to see that happen. Okay, anybody else have a question for Tom while we have him, or Tiffany, about clinical trials?
I will say that awareness would be helpful. I didn't even know anything about clinical trials until recent years, and I was diagnosed 10 years ago, and I didn't know anything about them. I sort of went through a lot of my disease on my own, though, alone, without support and support groups, and so
How do the
talking about
physicians
it
know
more.
about it? How does somebody that is a care provider know about these things?
Yes, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think that part of it is this new age of connectivity where, as I was mentioning, a site that's offering a trial, because of EHRs, the electronic health records, everyone's name is in the system. You can immediately do these kind of blast connections with all of the providers in the system to let them know about these types of things. And so we've been working with the sites on this very kind of thing, so that the primary care doctors aren't aware of this, because they didn't talk to the hepatologist, for instance. But when you're communicating within an electronic health record system, you can have access pretty instantly. So we're trying to work on that very piece there, which is to get everyone to be able to understand that these things are available, and then to be able to drill into, double click into, where do I go then, what's next, kind of thing.
Yeah, because I think the state of the art for this right now is that you have a physician or a healthcare provider that has an interest in something, and they do it on their own accord. And so their world of who knows what they know is their immediate group of patients.
Right.
And it's not disseminated out.
Right. Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. It's all about the individual. If you're lucky enough to have a doctor who's interested in it, then they would go and look for you. But you're right, not everyone has that. So this idea of now accessing these very large connected systems to be able to provide that information.
Well, it just it resonated with me, because this whole concept of managing your own healthcare is new to a lot of it, particularly like my generation. I'm probably like the oldest person on the call, but it's back, 30 years ago, if somebody said manage your healthcare, you'd be like, what? No, my doctor tells me what to do. And now I'm like on the other side, like, yeah, I kind of fucking 50% believe them, but I'll make my own decisions. Thank you. This is the kind of thing that really can, get people excited about how they manage their healthcare, particularly when, like, thank God, I've been pretty successful, but also horrible to myself through alcohol-induced liver disease. Had I known all this stuff, I'm not so self-absorbed. I wouldn't have said, geez, I should probably like do something about this. But I didn't.
Yeah, I do know like Epic, and I don't know how many people here have Epic. I know within our hospital, they will send us alerts if there's a clinical trial that may meet your needs if you sign up for that particular program. But it would be great if all of the hospital systems would start talking to each other, where it would say, hey, there's something over at Mayo, or hey, there's something at Cleveland Clinic, or that may meet your standards, or whatever what your issues are that you put in there, your parameters, I guess, for the search. Do you know if that is anything that's being looked at as far as?
So yeah, I think that you hit on something that is, wouldn't it be great if all the hospitals were connected under one system? And the answer is no, not in the United States, right? There are competing interests and competing systems that they don't crosstalk, and so that's a big problem. So ultimately, it's going to have to be a third party. It's going to have to be some type of AI generated site that is able to curate every single research trial, that's on the internet and pull it in someplace. And so yeah, that might actually be a nice little
You
project.
just gave me a homework assignment.
There you go.
I like that.
That's a homework assignment. I want to find out who's doing that right now.
Yeah. Hey, Shark Tank, here we come. Ariana, go ahead.
Not necessarily with the clinical trials, but Salesforce is already working with Kaiser and therefore Epic on integrating AI unsuccessfully, but it's happening. So it might not be, and that now all of the systems are talking to each other. Like everything is on Salesforce. So all of the companies are talking to each other, Google, everyone. Like, so all the information is connected pretty much. It's just making those connections, and it's tricky with sensitive information.
Yeah.
That's where
Unfortunately, the star capabilities of AI are being abused in that generating content and information is not being reviewed before being distributed. So take it with a grain of salt, but it's coming. I don't know about the clinical trial piece, but
yeah, I think, you could, in theory, if it's available on the internet, if you went to some central hub, like, like you're saying, someone who actually was capable of sifting through and again, organizing it properly and QC quality checking it, that would be really cool, actually, to have a single source of truth where you could just simply go to and, punch in some of your details, and it would give you a list of the possible clinical trials you might be eligible for. That would be amazing.
Right. Well, the American Liver Foundation now has a registry that may be something that we could look at in the future. And I'll provide that information to y'all in an email of how you can sign up for that registry. So I think having things, I don't know, Tom, what is your opinion on like a liver registry as being like a source to go to for if you needed patients in a clinical trial? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very good start, but I think it has to be I think of it, someplace that I would go to find patients. I'd rather be the other way around, where it's like a inverted pyramid, where you guys are the ones who actually have the ability to access us, as opposed to me trying to access you, kind of thing. Because that would be better.
So Tom, so are you looking at like 2029 for your drug to be available?
Yeah, probably. I think that's a good estimate.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we're going to start up some other trials in other areas to run them in parallel. So we're not waiting till 2029 to then start.
Yeah, what fascinates me is that if you really feel like it's possible that it has some sort of regenerative impact, that's, to me, is the game changer.
Yeah.
Out of anything else, if you can regrow damaged liver, tissue, holy shit, we'll all have flying cars, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the dream, and I know that regeneration, especially with this group, I know most people here have cirrhosis, and that would be our, the silver bullet for us. That would be something that would make our dreams come true. So
You-
Tom, that's your homework.
Working on it.
People won't
Yeah.
even
No
know what a
pressure. No big deal. I just gotta live 4 more years, so no big
Yeah,
deal either.
you can do it, Tom. Do it. Do it.
Anybody else have any questions that hasn't had a chance to ask? Ask now. I mean, I'm sure I can send Tom questions later on if y'all have any, but
Well, I
while
don't
he's
know.
here.
It's kind of like a way out there question. I do have an undergraduate in psychology, and if my brain doesn't go to complete mush and actually recovers, I was kind of thinking about looking into neuroscience and kind of more about how the interaction between psychology and alcohol. And I know that's been done, but I just feel like more could be done. And like, where's the best place, Jen, Tiffany, Tom, anyone that with my used to be knowledge, I'm working on getting it back, that I might be able to like put that to use, helping
I have
people.
a
cirrhosis,
suggestion.
liver disease. Yeah.
When was the last time that the big book was updated?
Don't need, I'm not.
Go update the big book.
Was it like 1953?
I'm just gonna hold my tongue on that one.
Yeah, no. Let's put her in neuroscience. I think I mean, I personally think that there for alcohol use disorder, and Tom, I guess another like thing with your drug, because I do know that there's a lot of there's a lot of drugs right now being developed or looked at that will actually suppress urges to drink alcohol. Would there be like a way that you would look at different molecules to put together that would possibly do both of what you're talking about doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be super cool. Because
Yes.
a lot of people I've encountered, and I do myself, suffer from co-occurring disorders. And so
Yeah, I think ultimately, because everyone's different and every system is multifactorial, a single drug with a single mechanism of action probably isn't going to solve all of the problems. So we're always looking for how can we combine things that have complementary, mechanisms.
Well,
so
are you
getting
guys
multiple
looking at
areas.
genetic markers for this stuff?
Yeah. So that's a really early area for this particular condition. It's a little bit more advanced in other conditions, but yeah, people are starting to really dive in. What's really interesting, though, is that some of the genetic markers that we have found in the MASL-D MASH area, right?
Right.
They're the same. There's a lot of overlap there. So there's essentially this is one condition that has different kind of, variables for each individual, right? Whether it's metabolic dysfunction or alcohol, it's kind of.
But it just think about it though. If you actually could get that far down the rabbit hole where you could tell somebody your genetic makeup precludes you from ever touching alcohol, you will be coming out. I mean, it's like you will get hit by that truck.
Yeah.
Again, that's big time.
Yeah, I agree.
I've thought about that many times, and the counter argument I always hear is, well, what are you going to do about insurance companies? What are they going to say if you end up getting liver disease? And you were told, but you also have an addiction gene, and
but I mean, it's the same thing with like Tay-Sachs, for example. You're obligated to tell somebody that they have that. The insurance is going to have to treat it, pay for the treatment, but
insurance just kind of puts a really, I don't know, it kind of messes with everything, unfortunately, right now. And things can always change. I will never say never. I benefit right now from being on Medicare and Medicaid, so my life is pretty simple right now. So Okay, we got like 5 more minutes left that we can thank you, Tom, for staying late too,
Sure.
because I knew that there
Happy
would
to.
be like additional questions, and I'm actually really glad that we have a smaller group tonight, because otherwise we would have had to keep you all night long. We'd have a slumber party here. Anybody want to ask Frank, do you have a question at all? Kelly? Kevin?
No, I just wanted to say thank you, Tom, for all the information. I'm involved with a clinical study myself in psychology, and to clarify with everybody, my insurance covered everything that the clinical trial didn't, except for my PEth test, which is the test for alcohol. So it was pretty expensive test. It was $2,400, but the script just needed to be rewritten into the clinical trial, and they covered it.
Yeah.
So the trial did cover 100% of everything to this point. And I'm at 10 months post transplant, and I joined this clinical trial prior to the transplant in hopes that it got me higher on the list for transplant to be done. So it all kind of happened overnight too. Everything that happened with my transplant, I was hospitalized and transplanted within a week. So I never had the chance to even think about it. I was struggling with hepatic NSF and beyond. And my sister kind of made all the calls and everything. And she, after I got, sober and the new liver, my sister said, by the way, you're involved in this and this, and here I am at a hope meeting. I had no idea. And talk about making connections. It was really hard for me to find a group like this, and it just out of just out of the hospital, and I knew I had the support from the hospital and everybody, but just to find sober livers here was just a blessing in disguise, and the wealth of information that we, as a group and Jen put together is just phenomenal, and the amount of time that it's been alive, and the group is growing. I can see. I haven't been here in a couple months. I just started a new job, and my time is kind of crazy, but the information that we're getting from this program is just phenomenal. And thanks again to Tom and Tiffany for sharing your time tonight with us. And that's all I got. That's all I got.
Yeah, I just
Frank,
gonna add on to that, what Frank said, and again, thank you, Tom, and Tiffany and Jen and Nancy, because we're at different points were in a hopeless situation. We thought we were, until people like you guys have started trials and started, so you're giving us hope, and we got to get rid of that stigmatism and be afraid to talk about it in little old Delaware where I'm at, because there's an underlying condition, I believe, in most people that drink too much. That's just my opinion. Let's get to the root of that and then proceed, but we'll have these different avenues of hope. And it's just my opinion. Some of my success, which could go backwards, that's why I'm trying to always be an advocate for myself, which we all know we have to be. Ask the questions, find out, and through resources like this. Bottom line, like Lindsay had said too, is I just remember a doctor saying to me, and I'm not giving any advice, but he first of all, he looked me right in the eyes, which I had so much respect for. And I was like, why? I was so afraid to say that my numbers were getting a little better. And he looked right at me and he said, because you took the poison out. And really, that's what did it, or is helping do it. So there's no soft soaping that for me. I can't, it's poison. It was killing me. I was on the other side. So it's just to encourage that there is hope, and I'm getting stronger through programs like this. And we need my responsibility is to get it out there to wherever I'm at, and get rid of that stigmatism and not care what people think, because they're going to think whatever they want to think anyway.
Right. Good for you, Eileen. Woohoo! Yeah, we're working on this one step at a time, Tom. And actually Frank brought up a really great question. And I know we're almost out of time, but what do you do with patients? I'm assuming most people have hepatic encephalopathy that are enrolled in your trial. So are you relying on that family? Are you relying on other people to actually make that decision for them during that time?
Yeah, so that's a tricky part of the informed consent is
Right.
if you have encephalopathy, you can't give informed consent. So it has to be the legal guardian, but that is allowed as long as long as it
Right.
follows the proper rules of a hospital where you have your guardianship in place, those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, I'm sure anybody, well, I know I would be very happy that if my guardian, my significant other, who would be that next in line, would make that call for me. So that's important for everybody to share that with their people too. So share if you go downhill real quick and there's a clinical trial, let them know if that's something that you want to do or not. Because that will help them make that decision, just like organ donation, right? It's like that really helps people make that decision. So yeah, with that said, well, Tom, thank you so much. You have been just wonderful. Do you have any closing comments or anything that you'd like to say?
No,
Or
I'd like to thank you guys. I think I'm happy to participate in these things, and I think that you guys are really doing some important stuff, and I'm just very pleased to see, Jen, the fact that there's a patient advocacy group now for this group, and that seeing you on the dais at Liver Forum, right? I mean, that's another really important vehicle to get the word out. So I think these are really, really important things you're doing. So thank you.
good. Yeah.
Jen, do you have Tom's information available somewhere? So if we wanted to ask other questions or whatever.
Yeah, just we'll go through me, but yeah, I do. I hope he'll answer my call or answer my email. Yeah, I'm just teasing you. Yeah. His counterpart Marlena, who
Yeah,
does all the
Marlena,
work with
right.
patient
She's helpful.
advocacy. She is fantastic, and I love her so much, and so she really connected us with Tom, and so I'm very thankful to you, Tom, for joining us tonight. And this recording will go out to all of our group. We are up to, I'm so excited. We're up to 261 in our community now, which is fabulous. And I'm very excited that we've come this far in the time that we've had, because we launched in June and we haven't done anything yet. You just wait, Tom. We're going to be out there marching the streets. You're going to see us all with our Sober Liver t-shirts on, going, no more stigma, no more stigma. So
Well, I mean, even with all of the, the walks this year, to have representation at those across the country and all that, you still have to send me a t-shirt, by the way.
I know. We have Sober Livers tables at American Liver Foundation. We're partners with them over there. Lorraine Steele was my mentor, the CEO over there, and also Global Liver Institute. So we're all trying to work together, and I think it's important. So, and Tiffany, thank you so much. I really appreciate you and everything that you do. You are so helpful and wonderful, and a guiding light for me many times. So thank you so much for being here. And everybody, thank you for coming. I hope that this was informative, and please let me know what you think, and please let me know other sessions like this that you'd like to be a part of. We're going to be doing one on Social Security next month. So that should be really good and helpful for people that are looking at Social Security, SSDI, and those types of things. So again, thank you, Tom. And
Thank you
I hope
both for
all-
being here tonight with us.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thank you
you,
all for being.
everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Night,
Bye.
y'all.